All right, we're gonna get this started. For anybody who doesn't know, we are Wilson Mining. My name is Steven. This is my brother Eric.
I'm Eric.
You can call us the Wilson Boys. We're a small hosting company based in Iowa, and today I'm going to try to give you kind of everything you would need to know if you didn't know anything about mining Bitcoin. How do the economics work? What does it look like running a site? How do the mining pools work? And then we can kind of go farther into the weeds on any specific topic. But I think the most important part is just like understanding the economics of mining. We're totally economic actors. So understanding the economics of what we're doing and why we're doing it, you can pretty much get a pretty good idea of why the miners are doing what they're doing in Bitcoin. So anyways, so we a small hosting company. We currently have 711 miners under management. That sounds like a lot even for us. I still remember when we started with just our one, but it gets a lot easier kind of as you scale up. You start to get better at knowing what you're doing and having better processes and stuff like that. So basically we got started in late 2021. Eric had been in Bitcoin for quite a while, and I was kind of just starting to look at this Bitcoin thing. I had a lot of people Eric for one, and then a couple of my friends were starting to really take this Bitcoin thing seriously, and I didn't really understand it. So I kind of had a fork in the road moment where it's like either all my friends are stupid and wrong about this, or I'm the one who's stupid and wrong about this. I need to kind of figure out who's right and who's wrong here. So I spend 30 days going down the rabbit hole, and I come out and I'm excited. You guys know the feeling. I'm really excited about it, and I've got a long kind of history of kind of being entrepreneurial. So I come out the other side and I'm like, I have to have a business in this. There's just no two ways about it. I have to. So I'm throwing all kinds of stuff at the wall, trying to think of clever ideas. And one of the ideas I landed on was Bitcoin mining. So I'm learning about Bitcoin mining, and you need cheap power, you need someone who can service the machines, someone with like a technical mechanical background like Eric, and then you just need a place to put them. They're very, very loud. They put off a lot of heat. If you were to stick one of these in your basement, your spouse would certainly not be very happy with you. We have a lot of stories of guys coming to us saying, hey man, I really need you to take these machines. Like my wife she's thinking about leaving me. They're burning all the time. My house is 100 degrees. Like I really need you to help me out here. So anyways, with kind of that information, I kind of landed on, well, I think we actually kind of have a lot of this. My family owns farmland in Iowa. Why don't we just stick one of these containers? Won't bother anybody. There's not a person for miles and miles away. Okay, got that one figured out. There's wind turbines all around us. They're everywhere. There's probably got to be cheap power down there. I bet if we go down there and ask, we can find some. Okay, we got that one figured out. And then the last one was Eric. Eric was a car mechanic for 7 years, the most mechanically gifted person that I know. If I give him a machine, he'll take it apart and he can put it back together. I don't know how he does it, but that's his gift. That's what he does. That's how he does it. So I was like, okay, I've got all these three things. I think I'm hitting all the kind of main boxes or checks that I need to start mining Bitcoin. So I give Eric a call one night and I say, hey, I think we should start a Bitcoin mining company. I'm going into my pitch, so on and so forth. I'm 15 seconds through it. Eric's like, yes, I'm in. I'm going to quit my job. Let's do it. Let's buy the miners. Let's go. And he's like, really, Eric's like even more excited about me than he's like, how many miners can we buy? And I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's just buy one miner. Let's just make sure we can plug this thing in. Like, do we know how to connect it? We don't know how to connect it, Eric. Let's just see if there's actually Bitcoins that get deposited into our wallet at the end of this thing. So anyways, we start with one and then we kind of go from there and we buy 7 more. At the time, what was the best Bitcoin miner on the market, which was the S19 XP. We paid $14,000 a piece for those, which at the time was pretty much the tippity top. We'll kind of get into why that was a huge mistake. But then, so we spend all the money And we take off down to Iowa, and there was a lot of mistakes that happened along the way that we'll kind of go into. The first and kind of there's two basically big giant mistakes that you can make when mining that there's really no way to get yourself out of. The first one is just buying your miners kind of at the top of a bull market. There's really nothing you can do if you buy the machines at a bad price. I mean, there's just no way to get your way out of it. It's not like when you buy Bitcoin at the top and you can and it shoots down 70%, you just hold it all the way through. That's not how this works with ASICs. These things are depreciating rapidly. If you make the buy at the wrong time, you're going to be fighting for your life to get back to break even, and that's basically what we did with those 7. To add insult onto injury, we also didn't understand what we were doing on the energy side of thing, which is the most important part, the number one input cost when you're mining Bitcoin. So if you screw up your energy contract, again, there's really no way to you can't make the machine more profitable. It kind of is what it is, and you need to have a low enough energy price so that you can be profitable. Again, we didn't know what we were doing. What this is right here is a picture of one of our power bills. As you can see, there's just a ton of line items. We have no idea what any of those things are. We didn't know what any of them meant. We had absolutely no clue, and our all-in cost per kilowatt hour when it was all said and done that first month was like 18 cents or something like that. I mean, we were underwater immediately. So things are going real sideways here. It's not looking good. We've spent a ton of money on miners. We spent a ton of money on kind of infrastructure that we needed. But we still kind of felt like we were in the right place. We didn't feel, we'd made a bunch of mistakes, but we still felt like in general that we were in the right place. So basically we had to pick up and move the operation to where it is now. And so now let's get into kind of the two most important metrics that you should care about if you're ever going to buy a Bitcoin miner yourself, if you're going to invest in a Bitcoin, like a public Bitcoin mining equity. These are kind of the two numbers that you care about, which is hash price and your hash cost. So hash price is the amount that you're paid from your pool for the amount of compute power that you contribute. So it's typically denominated in dollars per petahash, or you could say dollars per terahash, or the same number. I personally like to use petahash because it's just an easier number. Like right now, the current hash price is $48. Or you could do it in terahashes, which is 4.8 cents. So I just like to use $48, a little bit easier. You could think of this as your revenue for example, a barrel of oil. That's the equivalent, or a bushel of corn or a bushel of soybeans, same thing. That's what the market pays you for the product that you're producing, and then you have your hash cost. So this would be all of the cash costs that you have to operate your Bitcoin miner, your facility, everything that gets paid out on a monthly basis. So obviously you're going to need your hash cost to be lower than your hash price, and then you make money. It's as simple as it sounds. In practice, much more difficult, but those are the two things and kind of metrics that you would really care about if you were looking at to why the miners are acting the way they're acting, or why people are doing what they're doing. It's almost always based on one of those numbers. Shoot, that didn't come out very well. So I wanted to do a quick example on if you were going to calculate your hash cost, because you can just get hash price on any Bitcoin mining website. Like if you go on Luxor, you'll find it. If you go on Brains, you'll find just a number that shoots it right at you. But how do you calculate your own hash costs? So am I mining profitably or not? We got to know those numbers to know if we're in the profit. So for my example, I took a Bitcoin miner that's a new generation. It's going to do 3.5 kilowatts for 24 hours. That gets you 84 kilowatts. You're going to pay 7.5 cents, which is our hosting rate, for those 84 kilowatts. So you get $6.30 per day. You take your $6.30, you divide it by your total compute power, which would be 200 terahash, and then you get 0.0315. I just times it by 1,000 to get it into petahash instead of terahashes, and that's how you get your $31.50. So if I was a customer of Wilson Mining, I would, be calculating my hash cost. I'd be looking at my hash price. Okay, $48 is above $31. I'm in the clear. I'm good to go. I want to keep mining Bitcoin. If there's ever a time where your hash cost is higher than than the hash price, then obviously you need to turn off your miners. Otherwise, you're just losing money every single second that your Bitcoin miners are on, which we're not in the business of doing. So this is one of the concepts that I don't see anyone talking about, and if you take one thing away from this, I hope it is this. So when everyone's looking at trying to and we talk to people all day about whether or not they're going to make an investment into some Bitcoin miners, and basically what everybody does is they take the current hash price and they model it out 3 to 4 years, which is the typical lifespan of a Bitcoin miner. The problem with that, and we can go back here, is when we bought our 7 S19 XPs for $14,000 a piece, Bitcoin mining was crazy profitable. It was the best time ever to be mining Bitcoin. That's why the machines were priced so high. So what we did was we took our current hash price and we modeled it out a couple years, and we went, geez, we're going to make a ton of money. This is going to be fantastic, right? That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. And so it led us to kind of start to rethink how we're modeling out what the price and returns we're going to get on a multi-year basis. So what we started doing was just looking at the 1 year, the 2 year, the 3 year, the 4 year hash price averages, right? So I want to be looking at what is the average over this time span that I'm going to get paid. And do I like the returns based on that average? This is going to give you a much more accurate model if you're looking to make investments into mining as to, is this actually going to be a good investment? So, for example, we ran our model back in late 2021, and everything looked fantastic, and that's not what happened. That wasn't the reality. Similar to today, $48 hash price is really low. The miners were hurting right now. This is not a fun time. If you were to run that over 4 years, again, it doesn't look very good. But if you run it on the average, you're going to get something that looks a lot more accurate. And as volatile as Bitcoin is, up and down, you really want to be looking at something close to an average, and then kind of working based off any kind of assumptions that you have with network difficulty and stuff like that. So again, this is just like a graph showing hash price over the last 5 years. Again, you can see right here, boy, we thought we were going to get rich. Yikes, we didn't get rich at all. That's basically what happened. And if we would have just looked at the averages during that time, we would have realized that we were making a mistake in making the purchases that we did. But you win some, you lose some, you learn some, so here we are. So that kind of leads us to the next topic, which is when should you be buying your Bitcoin miners? When is it actually a good time to be buying miners? And in our opinion, you should be looking at your average and buying below the average. So there's still kind of a unique thing when you're in the mining world where the miners are priced based on the current hash price, and they project it out 12 to 18 months, and that's how they get the price for the machines. Just current hash price projected out 12 months. So when times are really, really tough, machines are really, really cheap. When times are really, really good, machines are really, really expensive. So again, if you're looking at this and I have my averages all laid out, I know that we're below the average. Okay, I know this is going to be a good time to be buying. Versus if I run my averages again, let's say in a couple years, hash price is higher, we're actually above the average. Okay, I don't want to be buying Bitcoin miners then. I'll just buy spot Bitcoin because I don't want to overpay for my machines and make the mistake like I said in the beginning, right? So a couple strategies for success that we've seen, like from ourselves and from our customers and just like the people that have stayed with us over, the last couple of years, like what have they been doing basically? So the first one, and probably the one that makes the most sense for the most amount of people, is just to say, look, what is my dollar cost average that I want to do every month? Let's say every single month I want a dollar cost average $200 or $300. I know that's my DC every month that I'm putting into Bitcoin regardless. What people will do is they will take a lump chunk and buy the equivalent amount of miners that they would need to satisfy their dollar cost average. So what I mean by that is, let's say your hosting bill every month was $150 and I wanted a dollar cost average $300 every single month, right? I would buy 2 miners, and then every single month I know my hosting bill is going to be right around $150. All I'm doing is I'm dollar cost averaging below the spot price when I'm mining, because that's how the profit for mining comes. I'm always getting my Bitcoin below the spot price. So what a lot of people will do is say, okay, if I'm going to be dollar cost averaging, why don't I just buy a couple of these miners? I'll dollar cost average for 4 years below the spot price. I like my odds. I'm going to do pretty well. I bought at a good price. Again, it's, when you host with people like us, everything's all passive. You don't have to do anything. That's a kind of a tried and true strategy for success. Another one is people just want KYC free coins. They don't want to buy coins from an exchange. Mining is kind of the tried and true way to get KYC free coins. We're not a financial institution. I don't have to KYC you for any reason. There's plenty of pools out there that will don't require any KYC as well. Again, you're just getting Bitcoins, straight from the blockchain. No one's going to find your KYC free coins if that's what you're into, and certainly there are a bunch of people that are. You've got kind of the if you want to scale up and go bigger, mining is certainly a game of scale, and you're going to get better pricing on the miners that you buy and the hosting rates and energy that you buy if you have more scale to it. So you can definitely increase your profit margins by going bigger with things. So we have a couple of guys that have 50 miners and one guy who has 100 miners, and that's kind of the game that they're playing. Is they want the rock bottom pricing on everything, and so yeah, and it's a strategy that works. Probably one of the most interesting ones is I don't know if you guys have heard about the heat reuse stuff. One of the coolest communities in certainly in the mining industry and maybe in Bitcoin in general. These guys are very, very clever, and basically your Bitcoin miner produces so much heat, you don't even know what to do with all this heat. And so what people figured out to start doing was, why don't I heat my swimming pool with this Bitcoin miner? Why don't I heat my basement or my garage or my whole house, or any number of different clever ideas? This machine is putting out heat, and you're just wasting it if you just dump it out into the air and don't use it. So a lot of people are saying, well, I'll just use this thing as a little space heater and get paid some Bitcoin in the middle of it, and I need to heat this thing anyway, so I might as well just get a couple sats, and there's lots of clever, creative things. I think a lot of guys like the kind of creativity that a lot of that stuff brings on. Tons of cool inventions and stuff like that. And then the last one is like people utilizing depreciation to offset either like income from a small business or anything else. Like this is a huge strategy. Before, there used to be 100% like bonus depreciation that you could do with your miners. I think Trump says he's going to bring that back. We'll see. Right now, I believe it's just 60%. But if you buy a Bitcoin miner, you can just depreciate at 60% the first year. I think you can go 20 and 20 after that, or talk to your tax consultant, please. But these are machines you can depreciate pretty rapidly. So there's a whole kind of tax game that you can kind of play in that area, which is kind of some of the guys up in here doing the 50 and 100 miners. Like they're really utilizing the depreciation type stuff. All right, Eric.
So I run the day-to-day operations at the site, and so I've come up with obviously the few things that I really care about. The main one is to keep it simple. Mining is not as difficult as some people make it out to be. They talk about smart PDUs, smart this, smart that, VFDs. How do I do this? How do I do that? Yada yada yada. It's not that complicated. It's you're running computers in either a data center of some sort or a container or something like that. You don't need to have all these fancy dancy gadgets that allow you to do this, control that. It's not that important. All that does is add complexity. And if you're out there in the middle, typically the mining sites are out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have help. If you're not able to do electronics or hook up everything yourself, you have to hire somebody. They have to drive out a couple hours to come out there and fix it. So if you're able to diagnose and fix everything yourself, you save a lot of money and time, and you're able to keep your uptime better, which is why it's important to, again, keep it simple, because again, that's just how you keep your uptime. And then operational efficiency is obviously another one. The less people you have, or I guess the more work you can do as fewer people, that's less, I don't have to pay people, I don't need electricians to come out, I don't have IT guys to come out, everything I can do myself. That's people I don't have to pay, and that means I can run the operation cheaper than other sites. Specifically, the publicly traded companies, they have huge operational costs because they have employees they have to pay, they have benefits, they have lawyers, they have debts they have to pay. Whereas guys like us, our power costs might be higher, but because we're so much more efficient, because we can run things better, because we don't have this huge amount of overhead, our cost is significantly lower than theirs, despite their power costs being, half or a quarter of what ours is, just because we don't have as much stuff going on as theirs, because it's just not as complicated. And then reliability is another one. It's really important to have your uptime, because if you can have, even if you have free power, if you don't have free power and like 25% uptime, it sounds great because again, free power, but you won't return your miner as quickly as if you had 7.5 cent, but you had 95% uptime, because again, you're just running so much more. So it's so important, and part of my day-to-day job is making sure the miners stay running when we're not curtailed. That's the most important thing to me. Is I want to hash. Well, we had a blizzard, and I was able to keep most of the miners running throughout the blizzard, because it's just so important to me that we maintain the uptime when we're not curtailed. We have to be running no matter what. So that's my main thing, guys. Everything has to be reliable. The fan motors have to work. The breakers can't go down. The transformers can't break. You have to have quality power. You can't have your utilities dropping a phase for sometimes. I think there's a guy in Oklahoma who has like snakes that crawl up that crawl poles, and they short out the wires, and then he's down for a couple of days until they can get more wires out there. We don't have the problem in Iowa, but it's so important to just keep miners hashing when you're able to. And then understanding weather challenges, again, you have to realize what challenges you face. If you're facing, really hot temperatures, really cold temperatures, blizzards, too much rain, earthquakes, stuff like that, you have to be in an area where there's not going to be these huge natural disasters, and you're going to have huge amounts of downtime from, if a tornado comes through and rips up all the power poles, you can't get power until that all gets repaired. And typically what happens is, Bitcoin miners specifically, we're usually the last people to get repaired, because it's more important that people's homes have power than it is to have this random data set or mining this digital currency as power. And so you're always the last one. And then critical equipment redundancies. So we run a few servers or a few computers and a few different internet providers in our site, again, to make sure that I can maintain connection because I have to be able to curtail miners in the middle of a snowstorm. And so we have Starlink as a backup, and we have 2 5G connections and a 4G LTE connections. So we have 3 different ISPs spread across 4 devices. So we can lose, half of them, and I'd still have connection, and the miners can still connect. Again, goes back to reliability. Is I have to be able to hash no matter what. I need to maintain uptime, and that means you need separate servers, separate ISPs, all the critical equipment that is, that would be detrimental if you lost. You need to have redundancies for that. It's not too expensive, but some of it gets kind of expensive. And then start small like we did. We started with 1 miner in the basement. We scaled up to 5, 10 miners in a shed in Iowa, and then we just kept getting, we just kept wanting more power, and then eventually, you'll run into your bottlenecks, with the power at the shed. We only had 600 amp service, so we're only limited to about 100 kilowatts there. We wanted more power aside from the power costs. It was like, well, the best place to go would be to find a place with, where we can put our own transformer down. But as as you're scaling up, you're going to run into these bottlenecks, and then obviously, you're typically smart enough to kind of figure out, all right, what do I need to do to get around, to get more power, stuff like that. But it's just important to start small, to know, I guess, to figure out the small difficulties first before you scale up.
Are you your own electrician? Who wired the building?
So we bought the building from Upstream. Upstream Data is a Canadian company, so they built the container. We have an electrician, a local electrician that we work with. I'm confident now. I've rewired a transformer where, if the electrician is pretty old now, he's about 70, 80 years old. And so I generally work with him. So I could, if I really wanted to, I probably could be an electrician, just because that's just what I've learned. You kind of have to. But yeah, so we hire him just because we need him to pull the permits and to make sure, I'm still young. I still don't know as much. He has 50 years of experience. So there's, it's kind of an apprentice, master kind of relationship between us. But I mean, yeah, you just kind of learn stuff as you go, and there's so much stuff that you learn.
It's so important you don't have a choice.
I mean, yeah.
It's mission critical. Like, there's no option not to know that stuff. You literally have to know that stuff. Yeah,
because when the transformer, it was a Friday afternoon. The electrician's not coming back out. I wanted to get up again. Back to reliability. I wanted to get up and running as soon as possible, so I get my hands dirty. I start rewiring the transformer, figure it out, and the power kind of comes out and turns the power back on. And we're hashing an extra 3 to 4 days, and that's an extra probably 5, 6, 7% uptime for that month, just because I was able to figure it out and do it.
Do you have a picture of one of your guys in the field?
Not on. I don't think we have one on here, do we?
What?
A picture of the huts.
I think there's a picture of a hut.
Oh, is it?
Somewhere in here.
It'll come up, but yeah, it literally is just a picture. You drive back home.
It's a shipping container in the middle of a cornfield. It's not exaggeration.
Yeah,
it's exactly the way you think of it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, be flexible. Is like I've said, I had to learn IT. I had to learn how to be an electrician. I had to learn how to work with Chinese warranty companies, with the manufacturers. That we had to learn how logistics and how to get the machines from China to here. I mean, we had to learn accounting. There was so much stuff that we had to learn that you have to be able to there's going to be a problem that arises that you're going to have no idea what to do, and you have to roll up your sleeves and just start figuring it out. Ask questions to people in the community that can help. Ask people around the local community. I mean, you just have to just start working because there's no one out there that can help you. You're completely on your own. The next guy that can help you if it's Saturday or something he won't come out until Friday the next week. And again, if you're down for a week, that's 10, 15, 20% uptime for that month, and that's just not acceptable to me. So you just have to start working.
What does that do for the clients that have their miners in there? I mean,
so
you did that, they pull out of there, don't you think, or
possibly?
Yeah.
Or I mean, it is kind of difficult if a customer pulls out to send their miner somewhere else, because a lot of companies won't take miners from somewhere else. We used to, but again, we got miners that were in really bad condition. And then they show up, they don't hash very well, and then of course we get blamed for the miners being in bad condition and hashing well. Or if they don't pull out, I mean, they're just sitting there dead for a couple of weeks.
Nobody makes any money.
Yeah, nobody makes money. They're not getting a return.
I mean, that's huge on reliability though, because if miners keep making obviously you're not, but I'm sure they get exposed really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that have reliable site, you're in our site, we get right around 9% uptime. That's exactly what we say.
Go mine with Compass Mining. You'll realize what
Yeah, I mean,
operational efficiency and reliability are number one.
Yeah, I mean, again, I take this so seriously. Again, we've had 2 blizzards so far in March. One was early March, one was late March, and again, like I said, we were able to mostly hash through without any problems. Some miners would overheat, but again, if miners overheat, I have it set up so they automatically turn themselves to low power, because again, some hash is better than no hash. But again, it's just so important. You have to keep miners hashing. That's the most important thing, at least to me specifically. And then obviously the big manufacturers are Bitmain and MicroBT. I have very, very strong opinions about this. There's another manufacturer called Canon, but they're kind of the redhead stepchild. We don't talk about them that much. So ambient temperature has a big effect on miners, and specifically Bitmain has real problems with this. So Bitmain they advertise a certain specification on their efficiency. Let's call it like the S21 XP has, I don't know, call it 12.5 watt per terahash.
13.5.
13.5 watt per
270
terahash, whatever that number
yeah.
is. You only get that number in a very specific operational ambient temperature window. And that is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit to about 75. Anything under that, you don't get those results. Anything over that, you don't get those results either. And so that obviously, if you're hashing out in the middle of nowhere, especially in the Midwest, how often does it always sit between 55 and 75? Not particularly often. It's either always freezing or way too hot. It's very rare that you get this really, really nice clear window. And so that's where MicroBT has quite the advantage. Is MicroBT, from our experience, will get the same efficiency in negative 20 degree temperatures as it does in 120 degree temperatures. Well, we ran a test, I guess the max I was able to get it was 114, but it will get the same efficiency, and so you're able to do your numbers based on that efficiency that they give you, because they can get it no matter what, whereas Bitmain just can't quite get that. And so we ran into issues with customers where they say, oh, my power bill is a lot higher than it should be because Bitmain says I'm supposed to consume 3,000 watts. And in reality, it was really hot that month, so it's consuming 3,500 watts. And these customers don't understand that because, again, you assume when you buy like a car, you go to Toyota says it'll get 35 miles per gallon. You can generally expect that to be true because, again, Toyota's not going to just lie to you. Bitmain, they do lie to you. They're a Chinese company. They want to sell you stuff. They will simply lie to you and give you the spec in that very specific window. You don't always get that. And so when customers, they come to us and say, my power bill is higher, we have to explain, yep, Bitmain lied to you. We're really sorry about that. There's nothing we could do about it. That's why we sell you MicroBT products, is that you're not going to get that specific efficiency during that, because it was hot that month.
Where is MicroBT located?
China as well.
They're both.
Yeah,
both
all the manufacturers are Chinese.
Or on that topic, have you guys faced any problems with customs and getting machines in lately?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a huge headache.
Yeah, it's been a hassle.
Yeah, we had 10 miners get seized, and then we tried to work with UPS, and they just said, too bad, so sad, I don't know what you're talking about. Or we only talked to the shipper, and you guys weren't the shipper, so, kind of leave us alone. We just took your miners, and we'll destroy them. It is what it is. And
Yeah,
so,
it's a huge hassle now.
Yeah, and so we had to have 10 more sent to us, because they were customer miners, and obviously we can't just tell customers, hey, your miners got seized, too bad. That's just not acceptable, so we had to get 10 more miners coming, and the customers got their miners eventually, but it's a huge headache.
Do they have to pay again for them?
No, our customers no.
No.
You guys have to?
DJ Miner, our supplier, actually just sent us 10 miners for free. So we were gonna pay for them, but they were nice and they sent us miners for free. I know it was like $30,000 that they just sent us.
Because of tariffs? Or what's
So customs has
Customs.
become very, very picky. Probably because they're trying to crack down on tariffs. And so what was happening is it was very common in China to get around the tariffs from stuff coming from China is you would under-declare the value of the product you were importing. And so if the total package is under $800, you don't have to pay tariffs. And so what the Chinese shippers were doing is they were saying the miners, these $3,000 miners are worth like $25 each. Obviously, when you figure that out, that sets off quite a few red flags. Customs and the government gets upset because they're getting cheated out of their money. And then, of course, they start cracking down on that. And then there was another issue with Bitmain. One of the Bitmain executives had quite the tie to, it was
Huawei,
Yep.
the sanctioned chip
Yep.
company, and they were allegedly putting some of those chips into the, I want to say it was
the control boards.
The control boards of the T21s, I believe. And so then, now we're just going to stop everything. We got to check everything at the border. Again, we don't know anything about these Bitcoin miners. Stop it all.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's quite a headache, but
yeah,
it
so
hasn't.
fun.
Some people have said it's eased up. It kind of has, but it's still difficult. Again, it's really risky if you underdeclare. The government's going to probably give you a call and say, hey, we have a question about this stuff, and if you're found out underdeclaring, you're going to be put on a list, and they're going to make sure every single one of your imports is now double and triple checked. And so it's really important that you don't underdeclare those values because, again, you're going to get caught, you're going to get fined, you're going to get put on a list, and it's just going to be a headache.
Basically, if you ever want to buy a miner, go through somebody who's done it 100 times and really kind of knows what they're doing. Now would not be the time to try somebody new, one of your buddies. I'm gonna broker ASICs, and we don't try anybody new right now. This, it's things are too chaotic.
Are there any American-made companies that are up and coming?
Block/Proto, yep.
We're about to get into that.
Yep. So Bitmain has said they're making some American, or they have like an American production line now. So is MicroBT. So they are transferring over to America because again, the tariffs are a huge problem, and just getting through customs has become such a big problem that it's just simpler. It's simply easier to just produce them here in the U.S. with imported parts. I mean, just like cars, you have imported parts from all over the world, and then you just assemble it here in a manufacturing facility in America. So.
Block, like Jack Dorsey block?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
The chips are all, the chips are all TSMC.
We'll get to that. No, Bitmain uses TSMC chips. MicroBT uses Samsung chips, and I'll explain why I think which one is better down here. Curtailments is another big one. So Bitmain has a big problem with curtailments. Well, not a huge problem, but a lot more than MicroBT. Is the Bitmains don't like to turn on and off a lot. So what happens when you're running a machine, the machine sits at 60 degrees Celsius, so it's it's at operating temperature. Same thing with cars. Cars turn on and off and on and off for 10 years straight. Eventually, that on and off of parts getting hot, getting cold, getting hot, getting cold, wears and tears. Plastic breaks, chips start breaking, stuff like that. Miners are the same thing. They get hot and cold, and eventually the chips break down. The circuit boards start to break down. You just have oxidation come on, and then they just simply, sometimes they just can't, specifically like the trace wiring just can't handle being turned on and off so much that it just breaks. And then obviously you have a hash board that goes down. Again, this is going to sound like a sales pitch to MicroBT, but MicroBT doesn't seem to have this issue as big of a deal.
They don't pay us anything.
Yeah.
We pay them a lot.
But MicroBT, they just seem to handle the turning on and off better. We have some M30Ss that have been running since 2019 that I've literally haven't had to take off the rack. They've been running fine. Nothing's broke on them. And like I said, they turn on and off multiple times a month, and they just run all day, every day, and they're perfectly fine.
You had something to say.
They just handle that better.
What's the average lifetime of a miner?
For a Bitmain product, probably you're lucky to get 1 or 2 years out of it. MicroBT, you can expect to get, like I said, we've had some in 2019 that have not had a single problem. Probably 4, 5, 6 years.
If you're running MicroBT, you'll probably the miner will probably become unprofitable before it actually breaks.
Yeah.
Like the efficiency will just be too high for that miner, so you just have to turn it off before the thing actually just kapoots on you, so to speak. They're the workhorses. Like if you ask anybody who's been mining for a long time, the MicroBT units are the workhorses. Like they just run. You stick them in a desert somewhere and somehow they still work. Like they're incredible machines.
Yeah, and that goes, ties into reliability again. MicroBT is significantly more reliable. We've had miners, specifically the last blizzard and the 2 blizzards in March, we had some snow get in the containers, and there were some MicroBT products that were sucking up a good amount of water, and they didn't break. Like it was literally raining on them. And again, imagine a computer sitting outside in the rain, and it runs, and it just didn't break. Those were the MicroBT products that were doing that. It's just incredible that you can have a computer that just runs through rain. It's perfectly fine. But obviously the whole goal is we don't want snow in the container anyway. But again, it's a blizzard, 60-mile-an-hour winds, not much you can do. And then size and weight, the Bitmain products are much bigger and much heavier, and so they're significantly more expensive to ship around, especially when they break. I got to take them off the rack. It's it's heavy and they're sharp, and then I got to stick them in a box and ship them to a place in Illinois. So the shipping cost on the Bitmain is probably 15 to 25% more. The MicroBTs are smaller. They're about 10 pounds lighter. So again, the boxes are smaller, so it's much cheaper to ship around. If you're going to a new hosting facility or they break eventually, then and I guess if you're shipping from China too, the shipping cost is just much less. That ties into the overall cost of the machine. And the long-term cost of ownership, the Bitmains are typically cheaper per terahash. That's because Bitmain's a bigger company, they can offer bigger discounts. The MicroBTs have a little bit of a premium on them. But since the Bitmains break more often, they're more complex breaks. Like you can't just swap on like a new part or something. Like the hash boards actually break themselves, which means I can't fix a hash board as talented as I am. I have no idea how to fix a hash board. It's a very intricate integrated circuit. There's also, you need microscopes, you need specific tools and stuff that I don't have. And so that if you need a hash board repair, which is common with the Bitmains, is they're pretty expensive. which, so if you spend, $1,000 more on MicroBT, if you have, 3 hash boards break on the Bitmain, which is pretty common over the life of the machine, all of a sudden your cheaper machine is the same cost. And without including any downtime, shipping costs, repair costs, stuff like that. So again, long-term MicroBT, it might be more expensive up front, but you don't break as often. You don't have to have downtime, repair costs, stuff like that. So, and then the chip manufacturer, Bitmain uses, like I was saying, TSMC, which is, what's the name?
Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company. They're the #1 chip company in the world. Everybody uses them. They make the kind of the top of the line chips.
Yeah, and that's why Bitmain is able to, in their specific temp window, they're able to get a better efficiency rating, is because TSMC has better chips. But Samsung makes chips for MicroBT. The Samsung chips run at a hotter temperature, which means, if I'm trying to cool, something that's, 60 degrees, it's a lot harder to cool it if it's 40 degrees outside. Whereas if I'm trying to cool something that's 120 degrees and it's 40 degrees outside, there's obviously a bigger temperature delta there. And so it's a lot easier to cool the hotter thing because, again, it's hotter and I'm using the same temperature air through it. And the Samsung chips seem to take a huge amount of abuse more. Like I said, they can handle curtailment, ambient temperatures better. So they're not as efficient, but they're just a little more robust, which again, go back to reliability it's so important to me to keep miners hashing, which means they have to be working. And so the Samsung chips seem to be able to do that a lot better.
So you guys, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't do any more Bitmain?
No, the Bitmains were way too much work. I was taking them off the rack all the time. They were a huge headache and they would break very often. And so because we built into our cost is, my labor. And so if I have to go out there and I have to pull machines off racks all the time, customers aren't happy because again, well, my machine's broken. And then usually what happens after that is if a good amount of them break is we start to get blamed for Bitmain's unreliability. We get blamed because, they'll message Bitmain and say my machine's broken. And then Bitmain will of course blame the environment that they're hashing in. And so we just took that off the table and say, hey, if miners aren't breaking, there's nothing to blame us for. And so we just started using the more reliable miner, which is MicroBTs. And then, I went the other way. And then working with Blockstest Proto, that was the American manufacturer we're talking about, is they have been hyper-focused on serviceability and reliability. And so when we talk with their engineers, the one thing that they want really more than anything else, and I have to be careful what I say here, is they want you to be able to change as much as you can without taking the miner off the rack. Because taking the miner off the rack and bringing it to another location is pretty annoying, I would say. Because again, these are 50-pound computers. They're heavy, they're metal, they're sharp, and you don't want to drop them. They're very expensive. So the least you can move them, the best. And so if you can just keep them on the rack and you can change components out, you don't move it, there's no danger. It's not as hard, it's not as difficult. And you can get the miner online. Because again, usually how my workflow goes, if a miner breaks, I'll show up to the site, I'll put it in my truck, I'll drive home. And then at the end of the day, I'll fix it, and then I'll go there the next day. So customer's down for at least 24 hours. Whereas if I can do it right on the rack, I can, I already know what's wrong with the machine. I'll show up with the parts in my truck, keep it on the rack. I'll take the back components off, put the new components back on, and we're hashing in, less than 12 hours compared to, 24, 48 hours for the machines I had to take off the rack. They have a good amount of unique ideas. They're not tied to a specific, I guess, size parameter. They have we're on an NDA with them, so I have to be careful what I say.
They'll probably be shaped differently than what
like
you would currently see, like the shoebox style of
like
form factor, where they kind of look like this big ugly shoebox type thing.
They have unique ideas in how they do the serviceability type stuff too. From what we're seeing out of Bitmain and MicroBT, is again, there's not much you can do on the rack, but again, they are trying to focus on how to make that available, which means they have to have pretty creative ideas. And from what we've seen, the renders that they've shown us have been pretty creative, to say the least.
As you guys look to expand, and if you work with Block, or you might have to think about how you do the actual rack itself, to have a custom-made rack with your...
Possibly. They're doing a good job of trying to keep it within this similar form factor, so because they asked for the dimensions of the rack that we use to make sure it would fit the same amount of miners on there. So they have one that might be a little bit different size, but it would still overall fit a similar amount of power well, it'd actually be a little more power dense, but it would fit in the same style kind of rack. Because again, they understand that, I can't change the container for you. So if I have to change the container for you, I'm just not going to use your miner because I can't. And so they're understanding of that, and they make a big push to make sure it's still going to fit. A lot of smart features that they talked about are, it can ramp up. You can set a hash price that you want, and it can ramp up and down for efficiency. If it ramps down to get a better efficiency, to get more profitability, it can do that. Or if hash price is really high, it'll turn the power up to try to get more hash rate out of it. Same thing with ambient temperature. If it's too hot, it'll cool itself down. It'll ramp the power down, so it'll be a little cooler. Same thing if it's too cold, ramp the power up. So a lot of automation that I don't have to take apart in, which is really nice, because again, you want the max amount of hash, but you want it to be profitable, and the smart features kind of allow you to do that. And then being compliant is another big thing for them, because they're a publicly traded company. They have to meet certain compliance standards, just because that's how pubcos are. And so if you were to buy from them, if you're a big mining company, for example, miners like Marathon have to meet compliance standards too. Bitmain might not fall under that sometimes, especially with the soft-go issue. The chips, they might not be able to buy Bitmain products because Bitmain's not compliant within US right now. Obviously, a US-made miner is always going to be compliant, I would assume, and so you don't have to have those those issues of possibility not being compliant. And then, of course, American-made, it's much easier to just buy something from an American company, because again, you don't have to import it or go through tariffs or have it be caught in customs. It's already in the United States. And again, I would rather support an American company than a Chinese one.
Is this like a coming soon item, or is this here?
We've asked them about when. It's a pretty sore topic for us, because
Okay.
because
We were really excited for them.
Any ideas, or it's just all speculation?
they haven't.
now?
They have.
This is exciting. I did not know that.
Yeah, they have. I'm sure real test. We have a test MDK kit.
Okay.
Which is just it's all they were doing is testing software. And so they have produced real things, but they haven't produced the miners that they're selling quite yet. They haven't told us when.
They
and
haven't even given
no,
data.
they haven't said anything
Okay.
about it. We've begged them, please give us a little tease, a little hint about something.
Yeah.
And they haven't said anything, but now would be a great time to do it because of all the tariffs and all the issues we have getting miners through customs. So I would hope a smart money bet would say probably the next 12 months, but again, they haven't said anything about it and when, and they've been pretty tight-lipped on what they're going to do.
Are they still the same hash rate or terahash or whatever as the different scale ASICs?
They have not.
100 to 140.
Haven't said anything.
They haven't said anything to us.
They've
about
hinted
it.
at some things.
Yeah, and we've made some speculations.
We're speculating on some things.
I've made some guesses based on, because the plug styles they use are the C20s, and they're limited to 250 volt at 20 amps. And they had, a couple of them on there, so I can kind of gather what kind of power
What do you
level.
think?
reverse engineering a little bit based on the hints that we have.
They're going to be a lot more power dense based on the render. There's two different styles. The one shoebox style is probably going to be pretty similar. Again, they're limited to the two C19, so 40 amps. It's about 5,000 watts. And then the bigger style they had was probably going to do about 12 kilowatts, but it would be quite large.
We think they're going to shoot for. So all the miners are it's done in terahashes, and then petahash is right above terahash. So our speculation is that they're going to shoot for a 1 petahash miner, which would be, great marketing and kind of like a milestone too. Like no one's done that yet.
So 12. So 12 kilowatt divided by 1,000. Be 12 watt per terahash would be the efficiency. Is that again? That's just speculation on our part. Block hasn't said anything.
Right.
We're just guessing.
That's cool.
Whether their chips are gonna be made in America too?
No, I believe they're going to use TSMC chips, judging by, because again, they get the most efficiency.
They are going to use
Taiwan?
Yep, Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwan now, obviously, when Biden signed the
Chips
the
Act.
CHIPS Act, obviously they're incenting TSMC to build some production here in America. So it's likely that they could be buying chips through that production facility, but obviously that has to be built and running first, which it's not. But hopefully, again, it would make it easier. But again, as long as the miner's made in America, wherever the chips are made, that's not, it's not our problem. It's Block's problem to get them here.
Just kind of one last thing on Block. This was like a really, really cool experience for us when like they reached out to us. I mean, we're, two guys in Iowa who mine Bitcoin by ourselves.
We're
and
nobodies.
we're like talking to the executives of this, publicly traded company, and they're like literally like taking very seriously like what we're saying and our mostly Eric's thoughts and opinions on, no, it should be like this. No, you should try it like that. I really like this. I really don't like that. So that was like pretty cool, and made us feel like really good about kind of them getting into the scene, because guys like us are pretty much largely ignored, obviously because we're so small. But there are a lot of us small guys, and we do make up a big portion when you combine us all together. But we just don't have all the skill at once. But it was really encouraging to kind of have that relationship with them, and that they actually are trying for the plebs, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So it was
Do you know
cool.
how many people like they reached out to and talked to?
For what we,
that's really,
yeah, it wasn't a huge amount. We were one of 3 to get their MDK kit to test their software. So there wasn't that many people, and that gave us kind of a big boost in publicity. As again, we felt special and important. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And again, like Steven said, they were taking what I said seriously. Because the problems that I had, again, I always explain, I hate going to the container, give me heads up on what's broken before I even walk in there, so I can show up with all the parts that I need, and I can take everything off the rack. And so their designs have done a great job of making sure everything can be fixed on the rack. They're doing a great job of, like I said, focused on serviceability and just listening to the problems that, me and other miners, people that actually have, mined have had. Because I think what typically happens is Bitmain and MicroBT might talk to the owners of the company, like specifically like Marathon, but the guys the owners of the Marathon aren't in the mines, hashing themselves. They've hired workers to go do that, and they're not talking to the workers, the guys that actually go through these issues that, have with taking miners off racks and stuff like that.
Right.
And so it's pretty important for them to seemingly talk to people that have had these problems.
Do you think that they'll ever get to like a hash cut where you're not constrained by just the little boxes that you put in?
What do you mean?
Like, like you put the individual.
Oh,
is
you
there a
brought this up to me
purpose-
before.
yeah,
Yes,
Is there a
yes.
purpose for the size of the?
Like basically like one miner, it's one big miner.
Like,
Oh,
Almost.
The fans have to, in order to get the.
you should
Air velocity.
pay attention to when Block releases what they say. I can't tell you, but pay attention and you'll be happy. I think that was my last slide.
Cool.
Oh, never mind.
now
I
you
had
got
one
one more.
No, you just keep it. So there's a couple of different cooling methods. Obviously, air, immersion, hydro, the 3. Air cooling is, again, same as it sounds. You move air through a building. You have fans everywhere. You have high horsepower fans to move a huge amount of air. I think our container does, it's a few 100,000 CFM, which is a huge amount of air. It's, you stand in there, your clothes are getting blown over your head, your hair comes out looking like you ride a motorcycle going 120 miles an hour down the highway. So it's the least efficient way to do it, because obviously, trying to move air through a building is tough, because, air is hard to move. It doesn't follow a pipe, it has a lot of resistance. It's just, the only way to move it is just with fans and just trying to push it as hard as you possibly can. And so you waste a lot of electricity just trying to move air around. It's just not a very efficient way to do it, but it's the simplest. Again, I only need to set up a fan and I can cool stuff. I don't need anything else. I don't need to monitor temperatures. I just set the fan up, blow air, cools the miner, easy peasy, problem solved. Immersion is this weird middle ground, in my opinion, where it's liquid cooling, so it's efficient, but the oil is expensive. It's, again, it's oil, so it gets everywhere. If there's a leak, you got to clean all that. You got to clean all that shit up, and then it just, again, it's oil. It just gets all over you, and it's disgusting.
It's very weird. You literally are, dunking your computers in a liquid.
Yeah.
Like we didn't say this, but our first facility was an immersion facility, and boy, was it a weird experience dropping this dielectric fluid that we didn't totally understand over our 14,000 apiece miners. We were like, we're sure this works. Like, they're not going to break. Like, it's very, very weird to like put a piece of computer equipment into a liquid. It's very odd.
Yeah, so it's just about as efficient as hydro, not quite, but immersion fluid is just so expensive. I mean, and it has to be special engineered, and it's not really easily accessible. You have to buy it from specific companies.
Expensive.
It's very expensive. It's I forget how much it was. It was well over $30 a gallon,
Yeah,
and you need
super expensive.
well over 1,000 gallons if you're going to do it at scale. You need thousands of gallons, so it adds up quite quick. And then you have to replace it every couple of years because again, it breaks down, it gets heated, it gets cooled, stuff like that, and the oil doesn't last forever. And the best, in my opinion, is hydro. It's the most efficient because again, water is very good at taking away heats. I think it's 30 or 40% better than oil. I think it's maybe more than that. So it's the most efficient. It's the easiest way to, again, you can move water around pretty easy. You just use pipes and water. We've been moving water around for 1,000 years at this point, so it's pretty easy to figure out how to move water around. And then you can use water, obviously, which is cheap. We all got free water here today. So water's cheap, and then you can mix in, depending on where you're located, you can mix in ethylene glycol, which is what you'd use in cars. So ethylene glycol is obviously very accessible. You can go to a hardware store, you can buy it. You can buy it in bulk from a lot of oil companies, stuff like that.
You guys see the what's happening here from the cars to the Bitcoin mining? See what's going on here?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities, and so again, I mean, it's the most efficient. It's it's a liquid cooling, so it's the best. It's not as expensive as immersion, and it's you can keep the reliability of the miners because you're not having to, with air cooling specifically, as you curtail the miners cool down quite quickly. With liquid tends, especially if you're putting in like a water heater, like an insulated tank, it maintains the temperature. So when you start back up mining again, the miners don't get hit with this super cold temperature again. They maintain their heat, so you don't have as much of a heat cycle, which is the huge advantage because again, that increases reliability of the miner because the more you heat cycle the miner, the more often it will break. And then obviously the cost, air being the least expensive, immersion being the most, and then hydro being kind of a little bit behind immersion, but a little bit cheaper. And that's why I say immersion is kind of this middle ground where it's not the best, but it's the most expensive. And so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense why you would do it. And then which is the best, in my opinion, is definitely, if you know what you're doing, hydro's the best. If you just want simple, let's just get this miner running, let's get this setup running, air is going to be the quickest and fastest and the cheapest to do.
Before you keep going, so we have to be out of this room at 4:15.
Okay.
So you've got about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So make sure you give yourself enough time to eat.
Okay,
Sure.
Yeah,
We should, we'll cycle through here. Thank
let's
you.
speed through it.
All right. So one of the things we were asked to talk about was specifically mining pools. So to break mining pools down, you've basically got two different payouts and kind of the way that mining pools are structured. So you have FPPS, which stands for full pay per share, and then you have PPLNS, pay per last N shares. Basically, the difference between the two is full pay per share means that the pool is going to pay you regardless if they find a block or not. So you get paid out regardless, no matter what happens at the pool level. You get paid out your guaranteed revenue regardless. And with PPLNS, you only get paid when the pool hits a block. So that you take on more variance in terms of your payouts. And it is the overwhelming reason why that full pay per share FPPS is far and away the most popular payout method. Probably 95% of the network is on full pay per share. That leads us to a number of different problems that are kind of happening in the mining pool ecosystem that not very many people are talking about if you're not really into mining, which is centralization. This is actually a really huge problem that we definitely kind of need to get addressed more in terms of talking with a lot of the bigger pools and the bigger miners where there's basically 5 pools that you can mine with, and then a host of proxies. And there's kind of a long explanation as to why that is. But basically, it's happening because you need a huge reserve, and I'll show you guys a calculation of how the reserve works to be a full pay per share pool. But you need to have a massive treasury of Bitcoin to be able to constantly pay the miners. even if you're not hitting blocks. So you need to absorb all the variance. Basically what the pool is doing is taking all the variance and absorbing it for you, charging a fee. So you need to have a huge treasury to be able to take the variance and not go bankrupt, because the lower reserve that you have, the higher your chances of going bankrupt, and this has happened with pools in the past. Again, it's a problem. It's a big money problem. It's kind of like getting the incentives situated where miners just want fixed payouts. Like, that makes a ton of sense, and paying for it is relatively cheap. But it's leading to where basically, a couple of entities can single-handedly control what transactions are going into the network, which is, that's not what we're here to do. If you want to play around, you can check out the link there. It's stratum.work. Basically, what that website will show you is all of the different pools and kind of like who is being a proxy pool for who. I'll kind of explain that here, but basically, if you go on like mempool.space, you'll see a ton of different Bitcoin mining pools. You might think, like the rest of us did, that all those pools are operating independently. You would be wrong about that, unfortunately. And basically what was happening behind the scenes when me and Eric figured this all out is there are 5 big pools: Foundry, Ant Pool, F2 Pool, Via BTC, and SBI Crypto. Those 5 I know for sure back their own reserves and don't have any backers. And then you have a list of small, like PPLNS solo pools, like CK Pool, Ocean would be an example, any PPLNS type stuff like that. And then your other favorite pool, you would think, oh, they're just their own independent mining company. Like, that's not what's happening. Like, so Brains was an example, very pleb-friendly pool. Like, a lot of the small miners like really enjoyed mining on Brains pool. When a lot of this information was coming out, it turns out they're just a proxy for Bitmain and Ant Pool. So Ant Pool is owned by Bitmain. And it turns out there was a whole host of basically these small pools that were just proxies for Bitmain. So if you look at Ant Pool, maybe they have 25% of the network, and you say, okay, that's fine, no worries, no problem. You start adding up all of the proxy pools that they have underneath, and it starts to look an awfully, very close to 50%, which is very dangerous. And something that nobody's really talking about, and it doesn't seem like a ton of miners like really care that much about it, and we're just kind of like walking into a situation where something really, really bad could happen, and I'm not totally sure how the mining community would handle it. So this is like what I plugged into ChatGPT, basically the FPPS formula that you would need to calculate. So basically you can run the whole numbers, and you need somewhere around 1,700 Bitcoins to be able to properly back the pool without going bankrupt. Obviously, if you're just a small startup company, you don't have 1,700 Bitcoin. This is kind of the crux of the problem, is you need a big reserve to give the miners what they want. Not a lot of people have a big reserve, and you certainly can't start a company off of 17 just all of a sudden have 1,700 Bitcoin. I don't totally know what the answer is, but me and Eric came up with our own solution to the problem. So basically, when we were learning all this behind the scenes, we got really irritated because we were one of the people that were using one of these proxy pools, and we're not the biggest fan of Bitmain, if you guys can't tell. Mm-hmm. So we were really upset by this because, one, we just thought it was extremely unethical, and that it wasn't disclosed to us because it's our hash rate, and we didn't know that you were sending it to Bitmain, and now I find out that you're sending it to Bitmain. And basically what they're doing behind the scenes is you go to one of the big 5 pools, and you say, hey, I'm going to open up a proxy pool behind you. I need 0.5% fees, and then I'm going to charge my users 2% fees and make a 1.5% fee spread in the middle for more or less a fancy dashboard. Me and Eric thought that was ridiculous. So what we decided to do was to say, what does it look like to try to get one of these proxy pool type deals? Why don't we just try? So anyways, we said, oh, what the hell? We tried. So we weren't going to go to any of the big the top five, the top like 3, because they already have so much hash rate. We don't want to start giving them more hash rate. So we decided to go to the smallest one, which was SBI Crypto. And they were surprisingly like, yeah, sure, like go for it, guys. So anyways, they gave us a really good deal. And then what we do through our pool, we don't have any fancy dashboards. There's nothing. It's very plain, very bland. But we just pass the fees that we get from SBI on to anyone who uses our pool for no charge. So we get 0.38% fees, which is, from my knowledge, the lowest in the industry that you can get if you literally just have 1 terahash, 1 miner, like for the small guys. So that was our way to try to help get some hash rate away from the big guys. We'll offer you super low fees, the lowest that you'll get anywhere.
I think even Foundry, if you're at like a 100 megawatt facility, you're at least at 0.5%. And so if you have 1 terahash at our pool, you're paying less than 100,000 miners with Foundry.
Yeah, so we thought that was a cleverish way to try to help the situation. We haven't seen a ton of hash rate come to the pool, like not a meaningful amount, which has been slightly discouraging. Definitely kind of why is everyone choosing to send their hash rate to these big pools over and over and over again? We can just kind of see the problem mounting. But I'm optimistic that stuff will get figured out, and eventually kind of the day of reckoning will come. So anyways, just to kind of end things, what do we do, and how does hosting with us work? So basically what hosting is you are buying a miner through us. We are taking care of all of the logistics on getting the miner from A to B. We are plugging in the miner for you. We plug it into our containers. We handle everything day to day. You literally don't do anything. You don't come to the site. Most people have never seen their miners before, never come to the site. It's kind of as passive as you can get things with mining. We can take all the major payment methods. So a lot of, one of the clever things people will do will open up like a new free 18-month no interest credit card as a version of financing. Buy a miner with it, pay it off in 18 months, and stuff like that. Of course, we'll always take Bitcoin Lightning payments. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's kind of as simple as it sounds. Basically, you pay for electricity when you're using it, and then you don't pay when you're not using it. It's the same that it would be on like your local electric bill. You pay for the power that you use. If you're not using it, you don't pay. We charge 7.5 cents to get started for MOQ1. So that's pretty good. If you were going to just try to plug one into your house, you're probably paying like 12 or 13 cents or something like that. And then obviously if you go up in MOQ, your hosting rate goes down. Like Eric said, we try to average 95% uptime. That can fluctuate a handful of points, but we typically sit right in the 95% range. So anyways, that's us. That's hosting. This is mining. Hopefully you guys learned some things and kind of got your head wrapped around the basics of things. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at us.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
If you want to if you want to find us, that's our email, hosting@wilsonmining.io, our website, wilsonmining.io, and on Twitter X, @wilsonmining. Shoot us emails, DMs, book meetings with us. We do free 30-minute Zoom calls, stuff like that. So reach out. Let's chit chat. And anyways, that's all I got for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.